welcome to the Candidates 2026. We have a first round games. Let's quickly take a look at them. Sorry, no camera for today, not sure how long will it last, but let's analyze. So here, Andrey Esipenko was playing against Javokhir Sindarov with black and had quite an edge. So the best move is to play rook a8, then maybe play bishop b6 or bishop b4 and try to maybe advance. But what Andrey wanted here is to press this d4 pawn, and he actually managed to take it. So bishop f3, queen f3, bishop b6, rook a6, and now knight d4, attacking the queen. So queen h5, rook e5, the only move, but again, it's slightly worse for black. Rook e5 takes, and now queen c6 with the idea of some queen c5, b takes c4, and now b takes c4, which loses by force. So Andrey is supposed to play this, and after bishop f3, play queen f6. But okay, I mean, I'm not saying anything because on this level and with little time, I mean, it's pretty much unfindable. So b takes c4, I mean, he kind of has two options, either this or this, but yeah, don't worry. B takes c4, bishop a4, queen c5, and now it turns out that queen g6 just wins the game. Rook e8 is a threat with consecutive rook a8. Bishop a7, rook e8 takes. We got to the time control. It's move 40 coming. Bishop d7, trying to go bishop e6 or rook e6, c3, queen e8, going back, and now rook e6 ends the game, and Javokhir wins the very first game of the tournament. The idea here being is if queen f8, there is rook e8, if knight e6, there is bishop e6, and now king f8, queen f7, king h8, queen e8, king h7, bishop f5, g6, queen g6, king h8, queen h7, checkmate. So unfortunately for Andrey, he didn't really handle the time pressure well, had an edge, but unfortunately lost the game. So the second decisive game happened between Pragg and Anish. What was interesting about this game is the opening. So we had Grand Prix Attack. So if you're not familiar, I mean, it's kind of not a weird opening, but opening you wouldn't see a lot played on this top level. But Pragg managed to get some edge from the beginning. Bishop f6, rook f8 was a little mistake. Bishop c3, f4 takes, rook e1, and after queen e6, rook e6, Pragg got a better endgame. And also, as you can see, a slight edge on the clock. So king c7, knight g5, king h7, king d7, rook e4, rook f5, knight h7, d5, rook e2, d4, bishop e1, knight d5, rook e4, knight g4. And now after h3, knight f3, c3, basically white are trying to create a pass pawn in the middle of the board. Knight d5, h4, takes, and now knight g5. And after knight f6, which was kind of the final blunder, so Anish is supposed to play b5, he didn't play it. Knight f6, rook e6, and now rook g5. So the idea being is if takes, king f6, takes, king f6, and black are fine. But rook f6 first, and now h5, and pawn simply starts promoting. Rook f4, rook f6, king d2, king f3, king f4, takes, and now king f5, king g6, last trick. Now if king g6, there is rook g3, and black actually win the game. And let's say, yeah, other moves don't really work. If h7, let's say this, king g6, there is rook h7, which is also a draw. But there is rook b6 as well. Trying to go rook b7, it's a win. So rook b6, rook c4, h7, rook b7 is coming. So let's say if rook, I mean, Anish just resigned. But let's say if he was to play rook h4, there's simple king g5, with the idea being is that rook h7, rook b7 and win the rook. And if rook h1, there is rook h6, h1, king f4, rook f1, king f3, rook e1, this, and pawn promotes on next move, and Pragg wins the game. So, and we get to the final game, and probably the game that everyone was watching between Fabi and Naka. So, Hikaru has quite a good score against Fabi in recent times, usually on a very, very good run against him. And we get to the following position where it's opposite color bishops, and obviously when opposite color bishops, there's tendency for draws, but there's also tendency for attacks. And here you might actually see that potentially a lot of things are coming towards f7 square. bishop b4, h4, d3, king g2, and suddenly he let Fabi take an edge by playing queen f3. And now it turns out it's not so easy. Queen f6, queen g4. So why not, let's say, queen g6, because now queen d4 loses a pawn. Bishop c5, h5, h6, rook h1, great move. The idea being rook h4, maybe queen d1, rook f4, and queen g4. And that's exactly what Mr. Fabiano Caruana is doing. Rook e1, bishop d5, small rerouting, rook d8, and he gets an edge. So let's try to quickly scroll through it. Queen f3, of course not trading rooks of the queens of the board, at least for now. Rook f3, rook f4, and there also was a trick later in the game. So bishop f4, rook f5, yes, here. So rook e5 looks like a good move, but to trade, if trades, it's okay. Queen f5 is not really a threat. Bishop f6, queen h7, queen f8, there's king f7, and it is a draw. So if rook e5 is played, there is rook f6, rook e4, takes queen f6, king c8, king h7, queen f5, and we're transposed into a winning pawn endgame. Let's say g6, takes, king f3, and let's say king h5, some last trick f3, just to block king from accessing our pawns. So king d7, queen f4, going back, rook f7, the idea of going bishop d5, rook e6, queen g4, and now white won a pawn. And also the king is kind of weak. Bishop d7, but I want to quickly scroll to a critical moment of the game. So bishop e4, Hikaru should have played king c5 and tried to run his king to c3 maybe. So he chooses king e7 instead, bishop g6, bishop f6, queen f7, king d5, and now bishop comes back to f5, because soon Fabi actually messed up. So queen f4 takes, so here king f4 was best, he plays d takes e4, which is winning as well, bishop e7, e5, bishop b4, bishop d3, and now g4, king f4, f5, and guess what, here he should have played winning g5, and let's say takes, f6, takes, h6, bishop f5, king f5, and white wins the game because this pawn promotes. So is there, oh, I think c5 maybe first, yes. The difference is, let's say if h6 immediately, there's king e6, and now if h7, there is bishop e5 and f5 is a threat, so if h8, f5. So first, what you gotta do is to play c5, with the idea that h6, king e6, there is bishop c4. And now if, let's say, king e7, h7, bishop f5, king f5, and white wins. So king d5 was played, and now f6, final mistake. G takes f6, e6, and Hikaru should have played king c7, and this would have secured the draw for black pieces. King c7 would have been a draw. So e7, king d7, and then e8, king e8, let's say king d4, and simple king d7. I mean, it's just game over. I mean, it would have been a draw, but king e7 is played instead. And after king c6 this, finally pass pawn, c5, and there is no stoppage. King d7 this, bishop g3. Wait, how do I win exactly? c6, yes, that's correct, because I don't want to allow this. So, but c6, let's say king c7, bishop f5, king d8, c7. And let's say king d6, just on time, king d7, bishop f5. So just like that, a lot of mistakes, but the final result that matters. Fabi has won against Hikaru. As far as the fourth result goes, players made a draw by E versus Matthias Blubaum. Matthias, sweep is not completed. He should have won all 14 games, but that's now not happening. So in the second round, Andrey is playing Hikaru, Anish Fabi, Wei Pragg, Javokhir Matthias. A lot of interesting games. Let's see how it goes. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.